Morning, KC. How are you?
Morning, guys. What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to celebrate the end of your off season since the regular season hasn't started, hasn't finished yet. But wow, that's got to feel great just knowing that all that's in front of you.
It's part of the gig. You guys know the drill. It's part of the gig.
Part of the gig. The season continues. You are in Washington for 2 games this week. The Bulls season still isn't over until Sunday. Casey, in that context, help us understand the timing of yesterday's announcement and why the Bulls chose to do that on a Monday.
Well, obviously, as you guys said, bringing me in, we're going to hear from Michael Reinsdorf later today, so I'm sure he'll address that directly. But my understanding is, I mean, it's as simple as that. He made up his mind. I mean, this was his hire. That's been well documented, and this was his choice to move forward with the dismissal, which wasn't an easy decision from a personal standpoint because he hired them and because he liked them, as he said in his statement, both personally and knows how hard they work professionally. So wasn't an easy decision on a personal level, but, there was the growing disenchantment with the record and some of the personnel moves, and then the Jaden Ivey dragged the franchise into a national spotlight that was unfavorable for the organization. So it was something that Michael Reinsdorf had been pondering for a while, and then went ahead and made the decision to make the move yesterday.
I think what's fascinating about it, and there's many elements of it that make me think it through even more, the idea that they kind of chose a lane. They were going to rebuild, and we heard that. They didn't want to use the term rebuild, but they were moving forward and all that. Whatever was said, I'm talking about the end of last year. And then you get into this season, and you're kind of wondering, wow, are they really going to be like a play-in team again? Oh, wait a minute. No, they're clearing all the decks, and they're trading everyone for second-round picks, and they are going to get out of the business of being in the play-in game. And then the whole team is so different. And you're watching Billy and you're thinking, wow, did he sign up for this? Is this a little bit too far? The Jaden Ivey thing was unbelievable. And then Billy is left as the front man for it. Nobody comes out and talks about it. So I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes or how all of those different elements impacted the decision that was made yesterday. But it's fairly obvious, Casey, that you choose to do one thing, and as you go through it, it becomes worse than maybe you thought it was going to be. And then you make a decision that sort of goes against what you approved of before you had to make that decision. Am I wrong in viewing it that fashion?
Yeah, I mean, you can even go into granular things that, and I don't want to sit here and parse every roster decision or personnel decision. Like I don't think it was one particular thing that led to Michael's significant decision yesterday. I think it was just accumulation of events. But along the lines of kind of the theme you're talking about, Mully, last year in the draft, it was pretty well documented. Most people around the team wrote it or talked about it that the Bulls were targeting Colin Murray-Boyles, who's pretty much a plug-and-play player.
Right.
And you can't control Toronto grabbing him before you. I mean, that's out of your control. But then pivoting from that to, look, I'm not hating on Noah Senga. He may end up being a very good player, but he's definitely a project. And so just the kind of the philosophical inconsistencies at times, I think, was one factor in this decision. And yeah, you're right. They did choose what seemed like a pretty significant direction at the trade deadline. But it is messy right now, and that was just one more aspect to Michael's decision.
Casey, based on what you know and have reported, what will the conversation be like with Billy Donovan on Monday, and how much will his presence interfere with, maybe enhance, or will you fill in the blank? What will that do to the pursuit of the next lead executive?
Well, first of all, that meeting, and I don't know if it's going to be one meeting or multiple meetings or what have you, and that are going to take place next week. There's no guarantee that means that Billy's staying. I mean, it's going to be Billy's decision, and the Reinsdorfs respect that. Their relationship is. It's hard to describe how strong it is, but it's incredibly strong. The respect that flows both ways is mutual. It's clear the Reinsdorfs are going to make it a priority to try to convince Billy to stay, but there's no guarantee Billy is going to stay. So let's start there. So that's why this front office situation, I'm not saying it gets difficult, but it changes depending on Billy's decision, because if Billy wants to stay, then, he's not the kind of people have the wrong impression of Billy and thinking that this is going to interfere with that process. That's not how Billy is. He's an incredibly humble person. He's incredibly well connected and respected. He wouldn't sit there and dictate who they need to hire. Obviously, his presence would change the search a little bit in the sense that the person come into the job, if Billy stays, would know that he wouldn't be hiring a coach. But there's precedent for that. I mean, look at Tim Connolly and Chris Finch in Minnesota. They seem to be doing pretty well up there. So there's that element. But if Billy leaves, then, the situation changes, and then the front office search has a different vibe and feel. So that's going to be kind of the first, I don't want to say even domino, because it's going to be a fluid process, but that's going to be the first order of business, is talking to Billy Donovan, and then that's going to kind of dictate how the front office search begins or, accelerates, however you want to describe it.
Billy was obviously a candidate. He wasn't a candidate, but he was coveted for the Kentucky job, and he was coveted by North Carolina. And I just don't know what's in Billy's heart, and I don't know that you can tell us, but I kind of wondered, would that be like someone offering Casey Johnson a job following college basketball? Because I don't think you'd run to that. And Billy obviously has already won his titles. Maybe he doesn't want to run back to that. Does he want to stay in the NBA? Is he looking for a break after all this horrific stuff that's happened to him this year? Personal stuff, losing his dad and his mom losing her leg and his mother-in-law. I mean, these are life-turning moments. So I don't know where his heart is at. But were you surprised that he didn't react in the positive to what would have been like a very big job offered to him? Or is he just the sort of person, when he was saying he wanted to finish the season, is that exactly what he meant? That he had made a commitment, he was going to do it, and he wasn't available to get into the portal today?
Well, kind of a lot of what you said is true, but let's start with that final part, because that's the most impactful one. That is unequivocally accurate. He's not the kind of person that would walk away from the job. He's not the kind of person that, would ask for commitment from players and then shirk his own commitment and responsibility to those players. That's just not who Billy Donovan is. So let's start there. The timing didn't line up. As for college pro preference, look, you never say never, but Billy's been pretty public about this. I mean, this isn't like a sourced secret or something. Like, he has made it clear that this is a different college game than the one that he, earned his fame and had such success with at Florida, and that his preference is the NBA. That's just what he's 11 seasons into an NBA coaching career. Right. He's kind of an NBA guy now. And then also, it's like you never say never, because like all the circumstances you laid out, maybe that changed his mindset, and maybe the North Carolina job was more attractive because of where he is at in his career than the Kentucky job. But I was saying openly to anybody who asked me that I did not think Billy Donovan was going to be taking the North Carolina job. So I think the fact that both these significant blue chip programs have become available, his name has been linked to both of them, and there's been maybe some back channel communications in both situations that didn't go anywhere, should lead you to believe that Billy Donovan will be staying in the NBA. And that's not to say that he's going to be staying here or staying in the NBA next season because of all the personal stuff you detailed. These are decisions Billy Donovan needs to make. Right. I'm not going to sit here and proclaim I know personally what's going on in his mind when it gets to that level. That's his decision. I respect that, and we'll find out, sometime over the next week probably. Whenever
the search for a lead executive begins, may have already started. When you look at this job, KC, and you see a team that has as much cap space as any team in the league this summer, you have potentially 2 first-round draft picks, and the allure of Chicago and an organization that does have a proud history, even though it hasn't been real successful recently. How is the job viewed around the league, and how might that either limit or expand the field of candidates?
The other thing I would add to that list, which I tweeted out yesterday, is, Jerry Krause, 18 years, John Paxson, 17 years, Arturas Karnisovas, 6 years, and it was a surprise that it ended when it did. This is an ownership group that does not like to make change at that level often. So it's an incredibly attractive job, and I also think it's a pretty quick fix, which is, I'm sure, one reason why I was so disappointed for Arturas and Marc to get the news yesterday, because this is a good situation that whomever succeeds them is inheriting. And you could make the same case that Arturas and Marc inherited that same situation. I mean, their books were clean in 2020. They had good young players in Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr., Kobe White. They had all their draft picks. They had a clean slate when they inherited the job, and whomever replaces them will have the same situation. So, look, they're going to be able to get a good candidate in here. And I would also remind people that when Arturas was hired, it wasn't just local people saying that it was, a good hire. It was celebrated around the league. Arturas was known around the league, respected around the league, expected as someone who was going to, build on his success as the number 2 guy in Denver. And you just sometimes, never know about that jump from number 2 to number 1. And, that's why we're at where we are today.
I understand the positives. I understand the cap space if you're allowed to spend money. I understand that that you got a lottery pick. Again, if you get lucky, you might have a second first-round pick. If you get lucky, you can list the reasons that are positive for it and the time frame and all that. But I wonder, just the winning aspect of it. Are there people out there that are top-level executives that feel like that's not the place to go to win? Is that still something that the Bulls are fighting, whether they should have to or not? This idea at one point where players didn't want to go there because they had been bad-mouthed by players. This idea that, you can go there as an executive, but if you don't have the power you need to do whatever you want, what's the point? If you don't get to use all the money that is available to you, what's the point?
Well, a couple things. I mean, the power part is not accurate. I mean, the Reinsdorfs, it's pretty well documented how much power they give their executives and how hands off they are. I mean, Michael will fully admit, in terms of basketball, it's a passion of his and he's a fan, but that's their job. He's not like Joe Lacob in Golden State or Mark Cuban was in Dallas. And I'm not saying that critically, those guys are just much more hands-on in terms of their ownership style. So, but the last part I think is worth delving into. I mean, it's well documented the Bulls have only paid the luxury tax once in their career. So there is, an unspoken financial constraint. Michael Reinsdorf, to me, on the record, has said that they will pay the luxury tax for championship contention, and that's the hope, is to hire a dynamic leader that can, move them back into championship contention in short order. And then the last thing I would say, in terms of whether or not this is going to be an attractive job, I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. There's only 30 of these. I mean, it's just like head coaches. Bad teams hire head coaches. It's a coveted job. If you're around the NBA, it's something you want to do. So I don't think there's going to be any shortage of interest. I don't think there's going to be any lack of impressive candidates. And it's on, the Bulls to get the right hire.
Casey, before we let you go, we got a final minute. Michael Reinsdorf will have a Zoom news conference this afternoon to address all of these questions. Where will he get his basketball direction from? Who will be helping him make this decision, plot this search, and land this next executive?
Well, I sent out a tweet yesterday that was a little bit misconstrued, just kind of detailing some of the people that are left in basketball operations, and it made it seem like they're the ones who are going to be running the search and making the hire. That's not – I don't know that part. What I was just making the point of is that basketball operations are ongoing. I mean, there's times where teams make phone calls to check on players or exchange information or, just check in on other front offices. That's what front offices do. So basketball operations continue while there's a search. And so I was just listing the people that are still within that structure, which is Michael Reinsdorf atop of it as the president and CEO. John Paxson is the senior advisor. Brian Hagan is a longtime front office executive, director of personnel. Pat Conley and J.J. Polk are assistant general managers. So, there's other people, but I was just kind of listing the primary people that are left to form the structure of basketball operations. How the search is conducted, Michael's going to speak on that today. And so I want to make that point clear that there's a clarification there, or at least I think it was misinterpreted what I was trying to say. As far as how the search for the executive is conducted, Michael will detail that today.